All right, welcome everybody. This is our Agency Transformation in Action series. We're going to be talking about everything from agency transformation within GL Solutions to some of the trends that are coming out in 2006. We're going to talk about security, and then we're really going to get into some AI and automation. We're going to talk to you about how AI could be applicable within your agency and within your licensing case management system. So let's jump into it today. Today we have Bill and myself, Sam. Many of you probably know us, but just a little background. Bill, I'll let you introduce yourself, then I'll introduce myself. We'll jump in from there.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So I'm Bill Mosley. I'm the CEO of GL Solutions. I've been doing this for 28 years now, so a long time. Spent a career serving government agencies, and before that, I worked at the Oregon Department of Justice, regulating gaming, charitable activities, a variety of areas for the state of Oregon. Before that, I was actually an attorney and worked for a U.S. senator, and just had a lifelong passion for being able to help government agencies. There's a lot of criticism of government agencies, sometimes rightly so, but we all need the services they provide, and they're important for the health and safety of our country. And so it's kind of a patriotic calling.
And hey everybody, my name is Sam Hardin. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at GL Solutions. I've been here for about 5, almost 6 years. I started kind of boots on the ground, working with agencies, understanding, what their requirements are, what their needs are. And over the years, I've built up to this position and kind of always taked, those hours of working with agencies and understood what the needs are. And now I oversee kind of all the client-facing teams, so project management, account management, sales, marketing, and all that. So excited to talk to you guys today. So let's, to kind of kick this off, we want to begin with forward looking. So kind of looking out into 2026, what are the industry trends? So what to be on watch for? And this will kind of really drive some of the things that we talk about throughout this series. But so some of the things that are coming about are the rising expectations for digital first services. So as you guys probably are aware, probably have experienced, maybe heard from the licensee population, maybe heard from your constituents that you work with. People have an expectation these days for digital first services. Long are the days of sending snail mail. That's really kind of below the standard and the bar that's set for these type of systems, so licensing and case management system. So 80% of citizens say they expect government services to be easy to use, matching and similar to private sector platforms. So there's a growing trend and need for these government services and these websites to act similarly and have the same workflows and things as private sector platforms.
When government agencies think about like how to compare themselves sometimes to like, okay, what, compared to a private sector enterprise, am I on the bleeding edge? Am I, trying to be Apple or somebody? And it's like, no, that's not what they expect, but they kind of expect you to be as efficient as their bank, for instance, being able to handle things online.
Yeah. And citizens who feel satisfied with their digital services are up to 9 times more likely to trust government institutions. So there's a direct correlation there on the digital services that are offered to the trust that they have in these government institutions. So also in looking forward in 2026, there's security and compliance. So ransomware attacks surged. So across the public sector in 2025, with local governments and school boards increasingly targeted due to legacy systems and budget constraints. So when we're looking out to 2026, we can look back to 2025 and say, wow, there's been an uptick of these attacks. So we really need to be thinking, yesterday about our security and compliance. 276 ransomware attacks happened to government agencies worldwide in the first 9 months of 2025. So that's a 41% increase over the same period in 2024. So of those, 35% of the attacks targeted U.S. state and local agencies. So, this is something that is happening right now. We cannot turn a blind eye to this. We cannot, just leave the elephant in the room. This is something that has to be addressed immediately. And the numbers and the statistics show that not only has there been an uptick, but the need is now, yesterday. Um, and then
And
lastly, just
this
some
is
of the,
only going to
oh yeah,
grow over time too, Sam.
absolutely.
Like when we talk about like AI, which is one of the topics that we're going to cover in a little bit, the bad guys are using AI now to identify and accelerate their attacks on government agencies, moving faster than the traditional security mechanisms can stop them.
Yeah. And then lastly, some of the workforce challenges and automation. So over 50% of the public sector agencies report persistent staffing shortages, especially in IT and engineering roles. So, it's harder to find individuals. Some of those individuals that were in those, IT and engineering roles are retiring or getting up into older ages. So filling those positions and is more challenging. But then you also have the competition with the private sector, which makes it difficult to find people to fill these roles. Over 60% of government organizations will prioritize investment in business process automation in 2026. That's up from 35% in 2022. So we also see this as a trend. This is something that people are investing in. Well, state agencies and institutions are investing in. And I think to Bill's earlier point, this is only going to continue to grow. So. All right, with those trends, let's talk about the agenda and what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about how some of those trends that we discussed earlier are going to be shaping modernization and how GL Solutions can support with that. We're going to talk about agency transformation, the service that GL Solutions provides and how that provides a secure foundation for innovation. We're going to talk about innovation in action. So we're going to bring about some real use cases for modern tools. We'll be talking specifically about AI, which I know is a hot topic for many of the states and agencies, how to use it effectively and what is actually available. We're going to provide some real use cases for how AI can support your agency and your businesses. So, and then lastly, we'll finish up with GL Suite product roadmap and new features. So we'll jump into it here. 2026, a foundation for change. So we're going to talk about agency transformation. Some of you may be familiar with this. Some of you have maybe heard somebody at GL Solutions talk about this or seen some, things online or from our website or just heard about it. It's agency transformation is really a structured approach to modernization. Or you could also call it continuous improvement. Our goal here at GL Solutions is to drive all agencies towards continuous improvement and towards a modern system that enables their staff and their licensee population to work together as efficiently as possible. And so agency transformation is really that foundation and structure for how to change. I think everybody's familiar and understands that change is it's difficult. It takes a lot of buy-in. It takes a lot of effort, and especially when we're talking about a software system, it's new, and so to be able to change like that takes a lot of work. And so we need to break it down into segments or what we call phases to be able to support that much change. And so
Yep.
GL Solutions, yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say when we talk about it, there's these phases and they're really kind of building blocks. Technology is always changing, and we were talking about how earlier in the agenda how we're gonna look forward to AI and what it can do for us and that kind of thing. But AI is just among the technology pieces that have rolled out in the last 20 years, reshaping government agencies. You really have to have a model or a framework to do that in. And so agency transformation really speaks to, what are the building blocks that are necessary to implement technology change, whether that was the advent of the internet, 20 years ago, or if it was AI or what have you, cloud hosting. These are all just technology changes. How do you implement that? And it starts with a layer of just like the raw capacity of the organization. Do you have the fundamentals, the decision-making abilities, the structure in order to be able to implement change? And then process standardization is really just about like, do we know how we operate? If you don't know how you operate and the agency is doing all different kinds of things, then AI is really just going to be a chatbot sitting on someone's desk instead of something that actually automates the business process that you have. And that's just kind of an example of it. But these layers build on one another, and you need to be solid. An agency needs to be solid in each one of these steps.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, exactly. And so how we're going to tailor this is in the next couple of slides, we're going to talk about the initial phases, so that capacity building, process standardization, and customer service standard. We're going to talk about that from a security perspective, because really that's one of kind of the base foundations to support these initial phases. And then as we move on through these slides, we'll get into what we call the mature phases, which is phase 4 and 5 of the integrated services and model agency. Integrated services is where we're really going to bring about, kind of the what we call the information highway between your websites and the back end of your system. When we refer to the back end of the system, we mean what the staff are using on a day-to-day basis. And so that's where we'll really get into talking about some of the AI, because as Bill mentioned, we don't have the baseline set up. AI is really hard to implement on top of that. And those phase 4 and 5, that's really where we'll get into the AI conversation. So agency transformation, the initial phases. So these are the 1, 2, and 3 phase, the capacity building to customer service standards. So when we talk about this, we want to start from a perspective of security. And so I'll let Bill kind of talk about some of the what we've seen in the government cybersecurity attacks and how that plays into the roles of building the foundation of change in your agency or system.
Yeah, so when we look at why is capacity, when we look at security, why is it a part of capacity building? And these days, everyone expects for you to be online, and almost all the applications you consume are sitting on a server in the cloud someplace. They're either in Azure, or they're in Microsoft Azure, or they're in AWS. And so it's making your systems essentially exposed to the internet, whether they're back office or whether they're for customers. At one point, you could have said, well, we don't have public websites, and so we really don't have a security issue. That's just simply not true anymore. And there's been a number of significant risks that have been raised over the last year, and these risks continue to accelerate. And the one that really strikes me is what happened to the state of Nevada. Nearly the entire state of Nevada was taken offline for more than 2 weeks while they were the target of a ransomware attack that leaked an enormous amount of private information about the residents of the state of Nevada. And the agency didn't really even know that they were exposed or being hacked at the time. The attack had been occurring for some time. These are real risks out there. There's people in foreign countries. Every single day, GL gets people trying to knock at our door saying, hey, is there a hole or a vulnerability right there someplace? And these risks have to be taken seriously. More than ever, your systems are being constantly probed and looking for vulnerabilities, and you don't want to be in a position where you can't issue, unemployment checks or a license, or having all of your social security numbers leaked to the public in this kind of thing. And it's just increasingly a risk. I was reading an article the other day about how hackers were using AI to attack and find vulnerabilities. And they can oftentimes, once they find one, they can exploit your system faster than a human being can respond now. This is only going to accelerate over time. There's a new large language model being rolled out every single month now. And so the rate of AI acceleration or change is occurring much faster than people can deal with. And you really have to have a structure and a framework to be safe. And so that's kind of why we put it in capacity building.
Yep.
On the future proofing of the organization, GL Solutions is a part of GovRAM, and they have a number of different kinds of requirements that are necessary. But it's a comprehensive structure with more than 1,500 different controls and third-party auditing to make sure that your environment's actually safe. And they do testing. A lot of people think, I have a SOC 2 or whatever, and that SOC 2 is kind of like the bare bones, check the box. Yeah, we did a little bit of security stuff. GovRamp is more than 15 times as complex as that. It's incredibly expensive. The audit itself is your third-party auditor is going to be several $100,000. You almost always have to have a full-time security staff on board. And then you have to do regular monitoring and reporting to GovRamp itself about the kinds of incidents and changes that are being made to your environment to ensure that they're continually safe. Most government agencies really don't know how their vendors manage security, and a SOC 2 audit doesn't cut it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key points here is like if you're working with a vendor, if you're a state agency and you're working with a vendor and you don't know, you haven't vetted that vendor on their security compliance, um, you should really be thinking twice about that. And you should really be looking into this type of stuff because from what I understand, and before GovRamp came around, there was a lot of self-attestation, but who's actually confirming that vendor is compliant? And is it something that the state accepts and approves? And so GovRamp really makes that kind of unified across the states. And so that's why GL Solutions has made a priority to partner with GovRamp and adhere to that compliance because we see it as kind of the future of not only the most robust kind of security compliance, but then also makes it something that's unified across the U.S., which is really helpful. So that way each state isn't applying their own specific security standards that might be different from state to state.
Yeah, I'd even go further than that too, Sam. The one of the things, some of the states that have attempted to set up their own security office where they're going to do a minimal audit on the vendors that are doing business with the state. But I have to tell you that, in my experience, the kinds of questions they're asking and the diversity of technology solutions out there, the states are just way overmatched. They cannot do a thorough job of inspecting all the environments that are out there. They aren't funded by the legislature sufficiently to do that. They don't have the right skills and expertise. The state IT units just really aren't able to make sure your systems are safe like the way that GovRamp can.
Absolutely. And to speaking about that, as we mentioned, this is becoming a growing trend, and there's a lot of states throughout the U.S. that are wanting to partner with GovRamp and making it actually a requirement for a vendor to have a system for one of their state agencies or departments. And as you can see here by the map, it's growing. So those states that are in blue are states that now are adopting and building a requirement for GovRamp compliance into their procurement. And so as you can see, it's growing pretty rapidly. I mean, if you looked at this a couple of years ago, there'd be a lot less states. And so, it's just kind of showing the growing trend of GovRamp and its presence in these states with respect to procuring vendors for software systems for state agencies. So I think you'll continue to see this grow and more states to adopt this. And so you want to be on the bleeding edge like GL Solutions is with GovRamp as far as security standards. So some of the GovRamp status and authorization. So just to kind of talk a little bit more, Bill, I'll let you kind of dive into the details about what some of this stuff is for GovRamp, but the security and frameworks and authorization and staff and governments.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, like if you're working in a government regulatory agency of some sort, that you talk about security and you're like, what the heck is that? I don't even know. It's more than a firewall. It really has to do with all the policies and procedures in your organization. How do you hire and fire employees? How do you take away permissions when that occurs? How do you verify and do background checks at the beginning? How do you give people permissions? There's a set of standards that were developed by the federal government are constantly augmented. I think we're in revision 5 now, called NIST 800-53, and it describes the security standards. There's about 22 major controls, and like I mentioned earlier, about 1,500 subcontrols. So what is a control? A control could be something like, is all your traffic encrypted? The usual way that this occurs is a government agency will say, they'll ask the vendor, the software provider, do you encrypt all your traffic? And the vendor will say, yes, we do encrypt all of our traffic. There's a big difference between saying we encrypt all our traffic and having to prove it to an auditor. Every little piece of traffic in your network environment, there's all of in a modern information system, they're all talking to one another. Are every single one of those communications encrypted? I can tell you that we do a lot of interfaces with government agencies, and a lot of them include things like flat files that, like, you'll get a Word notepad kind of document, just a text file that will have social security numbers in it that's not transmitted encrypted by the government agency and by their legacy systems. These pose serious security risks. They're not consistent with the agency's standards, nor are they consistent with the NIST 853. So when you do business with GovRamp and you become authorized, there some auditor, a third party, that you're going to pay several $100,000 to, is going to go make sure that every last little bit is encrypted, for instance, between the machines. And that's just kind of an example of like the framework and the requirements they go through. And then to prove all of this, once your auditor's done, you have to submit an authorization package that includes risk reports, supporting documentation, a systems overall system security plan to prove that your vendor takes security seriously, that they've got a overall framework for how they're going to manage this. And then finally, on the staff and governance side, to make sure that the decisions are being, we don't willy-nilly make changes to our environment that could put you at risk as an agency. Um, and so do we have the right kind of governance, the right kind of oversight for every single change? Do we test every single change when we're done? Do the employees themselves have the right kind of security background or whatever? Do you have people on staff that are doing this? And when the vendor says, sure, yeah, we do that, that's one thing. That's a SOC 2 type of level of audit almost. GovRamp is, prove it to us. Literally show an auditor, an expert in security that your organization does this. And then to have continuous monitoring by GovRamp. It's just an entirely different level. I haven't seen a state IT unit that can do it as effectively and thoroughly as GovRamp, and certainly the agencies themselves, like the regulatory agencies, don't have any, they have no capacity to ensure this level of security. And if you get hacked, and someone steals all of your data, and you're in the newspaper, I don't think the self-attestation that yep, we did that is gonna make you feel much better. You actually need to prevent the attack to the greatest ability you can, and GovRamp will get you there.
So let's talk a little bit about like where you might see some of these type of things in your system and what you can see through GL Solutions. So the GL Suite portals, so when we're talking about end user licensee portals, are built on a unified secure framework that aligns with agencies' technical operational, but then also those security policy requirements. So how you would see this kind of in the real world or play out in your system, there's things like single sign-on. So that's going to be things like kind of third-party authenticators, your Googles of the world, or your things like Facebook or even LinkedIn or Microsoft. You can log in there. So those are kind of more robust third-party security. Would call them authenticators, really. You have your multi-factor authentication, which is making sure not only do you have the credentials to log in, but can you prove it through, you are this actual person logging in through, whether it be a text, a call, or an email that's being sent to you, that you can prove that you're that person. Role-based account control. So are these people set up with different security systems to view and access different information in the system? That's really important. You don't want certain individuals accessing certain information in your system. That's important to be set up. And then also, as Bill mentioned, end-to-end encryption, not just saying yes, but being able to prove it in your system. Configurable password policies and complete audit logging. So you also need to be able to audit what people have done in your system, not only the back end of the system, but also the web. Like what did the people click on? What did they do? What did they update? That needs to be audited at all times, and you need to have access to those auditing logs. So, all right, let's jump into some. So that sets the basis. So as we mentioned before, you can't really engage in agency transformation on the initial phases until you have a secure framework. And so that's why in this presentation we kind of led with that, saying, well, we can talk about your business processes and we can build all those out and make sure they're adhering to the state statutes and it meets your guys' workflow. But if it's not built on a foundation of secure, gosh, you're doing a lot of work without really kind of checking your bases. And so
if you can't keep people safe, you shouldn't be collecting the data in the first place, frankly.
Exactly. Yep. That's a better way to say it. And so So now we're going to be transitioning to like, okay, some of you probably will want to hear about, okay, when we get into the mature phases, AI is kind of the hot topic item. And so we really wanted to try to present like, okay, what are some actual ways, not talking in, hypotheticals or not talking about what it could do, what are actual ways that AI can support your agency and how could they be used with some specific examples. And so that's why we're talking about the mature phases, phase 4 and 5. Once you've built that foundation and implemented your workflows, what are some of the ways that your system could be enhanced? And so we hear a lot of people talking about AI and large language models and what could be done, but I don't hear a lot of applicable scenarios for agencies. And so we want to, in this presentation, break it down and explain to you how they could actually be used in your agency. So
I think it's important when we look at this too to kind of think of AI as among the technology changes that have occurred during our lifetimes. There's not something completely bizarre about this. It's just yet another technology tool that can help us perform. The advent of databases and online websites, for instance, advanced reporting tools. There's all these technology pieces, and oftentimes when these things come out, there's this first approach that people have of like, oh, cool, technology. There's a widget. What can I do with the widget? Oh, I can play with it, and you're kind of seeing that in AI right now with people, playing with a chatbot. And saying, I can ask interesting questions. Oh, isn't that kind of funny? It can tell me a story and it can talk like a pirate and that kind of stuff. It's just way too unstructured to actually be practical. That can be fun for your kids, but when you're trying to run an agency and use it, you need solutions. Not the AI is a part of it. It's a powerful tool to get something that you actually need.
yeah. And so some of these metrics on this slide are just kind of painting the picture of how much AI is being used and the growing adoption of it. So, this is AI is something that's not going away. It's here to stay, and the numbers are increasing of people using it. So 78% of organizations worldwide now use AI in at least one business function. That's up from 55% last year, or sorry, in 2023. So, that number's increasing. 51% of government employees, so that's a federal, state, or local, use an AI application daily or several times a week. So, even if it's not integrated into your policies within your agency or your AI governance, employees are probably still using it in some way or some fashion, or information that they're receiving has been put through AI or has been AI generated. So, to be able to silo this or to not utilize it will be pretty impossible, and increasingly growing to be impossible. So 48% of state and local agencies report daily use, compared to 64% at the federal level. 59 state local respondents say they have access to AI tools provided by their agency. So some have adopted and some have an AI governance in place, and some are encouraging it. So that number is also going to be growing. But the top barriers to adoption, and what Bill has kind of mentioned, is there's unclear governance is a little bit unstructured right now. So I know a lot of states and even at the federal level, they're racing to kind of figure out like, okay, what's a safe way to utilize and implement AI? That will continue to grow, and there will be governance that is continued to be implemented. Ethical frameworks, how do we make sure we're using it in the right way, and getting good information from it that's applicable. The lack of technology infrastructure, that's a big one. As we mentioned earlier, a lot of these state agencies don't really have the technology infrastructure in place to support the usage of AI. And then also the tools not aligning with AI, with agency needs. And so I think that really speaks to how would you actually use it on a daily basis if you have the government governance and structure in place. I think that's really a big unknown right now of exactly how you could utilize it to make your staff and to make the interactions that you have with licensees more efficient. So I think that's one of the biggest kind of areas that's unknown to a lot of people.
And kind of an
So
example of that would be, when you're processing applications, does everyone just, do they just use their chatbot to open up something and figure out how to use it? Is everyone doing it differently, or is AI actually being deployed as a tool to promote efficiency within your agency?
yeah. So some use cases for AI in your agency today. So some of the things that we're going to talk about in depth here in the next couple of slides here are intelligent document intake for licensing and renewals. So being able to intake these documents, have AI scan it and review it, and flag certain items for you, or be able to communicate certain items to your staff about the documents that you're intaking for things like processing an application or a license or renewing for a license, things like that. Risk-based inspections and differential monitoring. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that in the next slides. Program integrity analytics, so fraud, waste, and abuse within your system. We'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Virtual assistants for public website inquiries. So, that's kind of the standard one. We'll talk a little bit how you can expand upon that in the next couple of slides. But that's kind of your standard, assisting people through the web flow of your public web. And then staff productivity co-pilots. So this is a big one that we want to touch on, and how staff can actually use some of this technology to support their productivity. So let's talk about the first one, the intelligent document intake for licensing and renewals. So I'll have Bill kind of speak to this a little bit more and how it can be actually applicable at your agency.
So when we take in the documents themselves, there's a variety of different kinds of things you could do, and some of them are kind of fun and you wouldn't really expect. So a lot of agencies, you have to go when you do a renewal or an application, you have to upload a photo of yourself, and there's usually requirements about it, like the background. You can't have a picture with a puppy, that kind of stuff. AI can just detect that. You don't need a staff person anymore making sure that the headshot is the right size in the particular picture. AI can just flag it for you and indicate that, like, oh, this person's photo didn't. And in fact, before it even gets to you for review, it can tell the person online, hey, you uploaded a photo. It doesn't really meet our requirements. Your head has to be, 70% of the picture size, and there can't be two people in the picture or what have you. Saves a ton of time. You can do a variety of other things too, like childcare facilities oftentimes they have requirements for the square footage. AI can read blueprints. It knows what an architecture diagram looks like. If the line is extra thick, it knows that. It knows it's a load-bearing wall. It can tell if you have an open stairwell. The things that are required to become licensed. It can look at an insurance certificate, do the OCR on it, actually read the amounts off of it, and then give that back to the system so that you can plug it in through a rules engine and say, hey, does that meet our insurance requirements to obtain that kind of a license? So there's really all kinds of things that are kind of mundane at this point for a human being to open up a picture or look at a blueprint or have you. And AI can just accelerate that. It doesn't completely take human beings out of the process. It just takes a lot of the legwork out of the process to help you to do things faster.
Yeah, I think that's the most important item here. It's not going to totally remove the need for human intervention. It's just going to make what we humans are doing much quicker, and it's going to give the information at their fingertips and make it easily and readily available to action on, rather than having to go analyze, look, and cross different hands. So I think that's why this really matters, and I think that's an important message to say. Is like, oh, we're not removing human intervention. We're just making it much more efficient and faster to process, which ultimately extends down to the licensee population. That all your licensee
Yeah.
populations want their applications to be processed as quickly as possible. They want their notifications as quickly as possible, which is, that goes back to the expectations of users these days. They expect, pretty quick turnaround times, and these type of solutions really help with that and make it faster for these individuals to be able to respond, and get the information back to the licensee population.
And as you take labor out of the whole process of, the mundane sort of thing, you can rechannel some of those resources to do things that AI can't do. AI can't interview a witness who was harmed by a physician someplace. or a child that was harmed in a foster care facility, for instance. You need people to do that kind of activity, but AI will allow you to free up resources to keep the public safe.
This next one is really kind of talking about, the work that a lot of these agencies are doing out in the field, right? So we're sending inspectors, investigators, people out into the field to conduct some sort of inspection, investigation, visit, things like that. So AI can really support with that as well. They can review data, information, and be able to give those people working out in the fields information that really help them. I mean, some of the ideas that we have around here are, they can review things like staffing ratios, complaint patterns, violations, other indicators that might either prioritize inspections, let you know, hey, this person or this facility needs to be inspected because we're seeing some information around, complaints or violations. And so it might be time to prioritize this inspection here at this site. It can also do things like flag high risk sites. So somewhere that, maybe that inspector or investigator needs to be aware of, like, hey, there's been some complaints made here, and you need to be aware when you go into this facility or go to this location. It also focuses limited inspector time where it most improves safety and quality. So it gives them very important information for the work that they're going to go out and conduct, and makes them aware of what's the information that's been shared previously towards that inspection or investigation, and provides that. So
one of the ones I like the best about this is if you do, like, we think of, probably many of you have done like an online meeting, for instance, and you have it record the transcript and then give you a little summary of the transcript afterwards. AI is great at doing that, giving you action items. But if you extend that a step further, what if it could actually ingest all of the information you have about a case and then summarize your entire case history? Oh, we interviewed this person on this date, and then this person, we got a complaint on this date, we went to a board meeting. And what if you could do that instead of generating a static report every single time? AI could just digest the entire case history and give it back to you so you could proceed and go to the board and take action.
Yeah. There's other things like, travel time, and the routing of things. So, if you have inspectors that are out there, or investigators that are out there trying to be most efficient with their time, you have a big geographical area for which they're responsible for. AI is going to be able to plug that in and say, oh, the most effective and efficient way to do these inspections that you have on your docket are, hit this location first, this location second, take this route. It's going to be able to provide very accurate information on the most efficient way to work through your inspection docket, or the inspections that you have on your plate. It's actually really responsive and good at that, of saying, this is exactly how you would fill your day if you have inspections, and the most efficient way to travel to those. So that's another.
When we were doing the early experimentation of that feature and trying to figure out whether it would work or not, we simply asked it to find the most efficient route among all the breweries in Kalispell, Montana. And sure enough, you can find the most efficient route to go between all the breweries in the city.
That's helpful information. Yeah.
I know it is.
All right, so the next one, the AI use case for program integrity and analytics. So we're talking fraud, waste, and abuse here. So it's going to run anomaly detection on claims, benefits, and licensure activity. So sudden ownership changes, multiple ownership changes. It can view things like employees that are being associated to a business. It can review those employees and tell you certain things about some of the changes that are being conducted. And so then it can triage and flag suspicious cases to investigators with explainable features. So it can kind of take the next step and tell you, hey, this business has changed hands multiple times within the last, quarter, month, year. And so they can flag it as suspicious and let you know, like, hey, might want to look at this, or, you should be aware that something's going on here. I think this specifically speaks to like your case management system within GL Solutions. Like, was there some things that we should have been aware about to kind of stop and try to be proactive about some of this case management? I think this will provide good information for that.
In the gaming industry too, that can be directly applicable. You've got all these slot machines that are on the on the floor or tables? Has the handle changed? Has the payout changed? If it's an entire casino, for instance, has the administrative costs changed relative to the amount of revenue that they have over time? We can spot anomalies among those kinds of devices to see if there's a problem.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so virtual assistants on the public web inquiries. So taking it maybe a step further from just your AI chatbot, which I know everyone's pretty familiar with, and we can take it a step further. There is when you log into a licensee portal. Many of you are familiar with jail solutions licensee portals, but when you can log in here, AI can route you where you need to go based on the information that you give it. So you can log in and say, in general terms, just in layman's terms, you can say, I am trying to do X, and AI will route you to where you need to be in the system. So it's almost kind of like a guidance tool on your websites to be able to put you in the right area and position to do exactly what you need to do. I know this is especially applicable in areas where there's a lot of permits or applications that are very specific, right? I see this a lot in the alcohol commissions and boards where some of the permits are very specific for what you're trying to do. You might be having a nonprofit event with serving wine outdoors. Well, that's a specific type of permit that somebody needs to apply to, which can be kind of difficult to understand. What permit do I actually need? Well, AI can then take that information of exactly the event that you're holding or trying to apply for a permit to, and it can tell you, oh, yeah, you need to apply for this permit right here. It takes the guessing work of out of what you're trying to accomplish and do, and it aligns it with the agency's permits and applications that you support and make available. So
One of the
it
important things in this chatbot feature is that, like, if you just go to your standard kind of Google and Bing or wherever you're going to, and you're trying to use Copilot or some chat feature to go look up something, the information that it gets is pulling from the entire internet, some of which is outdated, some of which isn't, some of it might not even apply to you, and has a hard time differentiating. And what you need in it, if you're going to post something like this, is you need to say, I want you to look only at this set of information, and that can include like desk manuals or your regulations for your state to limit its view to be that specific set of material.
Okay. And then the last one we mentioned here is staff productivity copilot. So these are things like it's going to summarize lengthy case files or rule makings or draft plain language renewal reminders or deficiency notices. It's going to convert policy docs into PowerPoint briefings or assemble onboarding materials for manuals. I mean, there's a lot of examples here that AI can support with staff productivity tools. So, why does this matter? Well, it's going to speed up the internal work that you do within your agency. It's going to assist in a lot of these manual processes, and it's going to free staff up for higher value tasks. So some of this, you know, things like onboarding, things like reviewing documentation, actioning it's going to take a lot of the kind of manual work out of that and make it very efficient and speedy, so that way your staff won't have to spend time doing that, and they can spend their time doing more high value things. I think long are the days are gone of having to create PowerPoints and stuff. You can go into AI and have it, feed it information itself to create a PowerPoint, or even things like documentation that you need for a board meeting. Like, there's not a need for somebody to go manually create that anymore. It's just
One of
not
the
needed.
one of the features we're implementing right now is you get people in the public who are trying to renew their license or application, and they have a question about, like, I don't know what this means, and they in their website they can actually send you the question, so you got this little conversation kind of going back and forth between your agency and the licensee. AI can just suggest how you should answer it. It doesn't have to take out the agency employee. It can just help them to respond in a more efficient way to the question that's being asked. And by telling you, hey, what you usually say when someone asks about the square footage requirement is X, Y, and Z, It can just do that for you and suggest it. And you don't have to really even trust the AI. You can just, the human being can still review it and say, oh yeah, that's right on. Or they can make an update to make sure it's accurate.
Sorry. Okay, so let's talk about innovation spotlight. So we want to provide some case studies and what's actually been done. So so let's take a look here. The agency overview. So um, uh, this is an example of an agency and what they've been able to do and how they've been able to implement that. So there's been 4,500 licensed childcare facilities for this agency. They oversee 2,400 licensed family foster homes. So they're working on transforming their agency, and so they're started from kind of a phase 2 process standard. We need to make sure everybody's doing things the same way, consistent within the system that meets their internal workflows and then also meets state statute. Some of the challenges they had was foster care licensing was paper-based, processes tracked in Excel. So obviously that's going to create errors and efficiencies in tracking that. It's just it's kind of inevitable with someone entering into Excel spreadsheets. The child care licensing was outdated database, so incomplete information, or sometimes we see that there's multiple different applications that people are entering information into. So you want to have that unified, want to have one single place that people are entering this information for that's unified. So overall, the manual workflows created barriers to entry. So information wasn't getting inputted into the system. It wasn't able to be actioned. Licensing could take years. That
Yeah.
it sounds crazy, but it definitely can.
Well, and when you have a
Yeah,
shortage of foster care and child care providers in your state and it takes 3 years to get them licensed, it's, that's not the problem you want.
yeah, absolutely. And so some of the solutions that we implemented at GL Solutions were, the digital transformation, agency transformation structure that we've talked about, the built-in process guides for GL Suite. So, I think the biggest takeaway for the process guides are they're interactive. So I think a lot of other vendors and places have process guides, but the thing about GL Solutions process guides is they're interactive. So they're going to take you to where you need to be in the system. They're going to action certain things. So if you need to review a set of requirements, well, you have a process guide step that you can click that's going to bring up a page that you can view all of the requirements in one single page and review them and action them right from there. You don't have to go clicking around. You don't have to figure out where you need to be in the system to action that. The process guides are going to lead you and direct you through that. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway with the process guides is not only are they going to explain to you what you should do, but it's integrated into the system. The automation is. I think that's the major part there. And so a lot of this also is having analytics within your system. Well, this kind of speaks to the phase 2 is like to have accurate analytics in your system. You have to be able to have standard processes and people entering information the same way and in a way that you can analyze the data. So I think that everybody wants to talk about, oh, I want analytics, oh, I want this data to be able to review. Well, the first step in reviewing data and having it something that you can actually action and provide efficiency measures for is it has to be entered into the system consistently and in the same way so that the system can aggregate that data, pull it together, and provide you insights that actually mean something. But it all starts with how the data is structured in the system. So if you have people that are going rogue and entering information in the system, well, that's really hard to have accurate analytics and to actually view that. So I think the first step is really getting data into your system in a way that's consistent and that flows into some of those metrics that you want to look at. And just reducing some of the barriers to entry. So that's kind of the automation that we've been talking about. Like, how do we make people's lives and jobs easier through some of this AI stuff, through some of the products and services that we offer through agency transformation? We're really trying to make their lives easier to be able to do their job and provide the services that agency or department is set out to do. Another case study here is this agency licenses and permits and oversees pharmacists and pharmacies. They regulate regulates the distribution of prescription drugs, medical gases, durable medical equipment, and legend devices. So over 2,200 licenses for individuals and facilities. This agency is currently working on phase 3, which is the customer service phase. So they have the structure in place, they have the workflows in place, they're entering data consistently, they're following process guides and how the system was set up to work. Now they really want to work on supporting the licensee. So how do we make the websites and the interaction that the public has on the web as efficient as possible, and that it seamlessly connects with the work that the agency staff are doing. So, if somebody submits an application, does that flow to the right licensing specialist on the team to review that? Do they know that they have that action item? Do they know that they have that application to review? So it's really tying the public web to the back end and making sure that's as efficient as possible. So some of the challenges they had before coming to GL Solutions were no web presence for licensing services. So everything was done manually through manual entry. That it's going to waste time. It's going to make it hard. It's open to errors. And then also what it does is it requires a lot of manual communication back and forth. So if there is something that they don't have or information that wasn't perfectly responded to, well, they're going to have to pick up the phone and call that person, and that's going to slow the processing time. Staff of 5 that were overwhelmed by manual process. So sometimes these agencies have smaller staff to deal with a huge workflow. You see this a lot in social services. They have caseloads that are way too much for individuals to do a good job on. They're just pounded with the amount of cases that they have, and they're not able to really do an effective job just because of the sheer volume that's coming in. They had a high volume of calls, emails, and mailed letters. So they had communications coming in multiple different streams to them that was hard to keep up and manage. They had time-consuming password management and paper-based workflows. So you get a lot of calls about, hey, I need to log in. Maybe I only log in to renew my license every 2 years. Well, I forgot my password inevitably. I know I'm in that bucket. If I don't have to use that password pretty often, I'm going to forget it. And so then I'm going to have to call somebody and figure out, what's my password, or go through some means to recover that password. So some of the solutions are transition to digital licensing services. So implementing those websites, some of the things that we mentioned earlier, like the multi-factor authentication, the single sign-ons, making it easy for people to log in, view the information that they need to review, and making the workflow easy for them to enter the information they need to for the application, license, or renewal, or changing an ownership, things like that. Implemented single sign-on for password management. So we took the management of the passwords out of the hands of the agency and made that no longer their responsibility. Pass that on to third parties that do that all day, that the public are used to. So you log on to Twitter or X or something like that. You can log in through Google or things like that. So you probably either remember those passwords a lot better, or they have a system in place for you to easily update your password digitally rather than reaching out to somebody by phone. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about some of you are probably interested. Well, what is GL Solutions? What's on our product roadmap? What are we going to be building out? What can we be expecting from GL Solutions in the future? And so I'll have Bill kind of speak about some of the things that we're going to be building out that speak to these items that we mentioned earlier, and what you can expect from GL Solutions in the coming future.
Yeah, just real quickly, like one of the features that's built into it, it has partly to do with our security and tracking, but it's that feeds into this. But you can report an issue within the application itself. So if you need an enhancement, a new report, you want to, you think there's an error in some ways, you can actually report that within the system itself now. And what makes it so powerful is that the application is actually tracking every single thing that the user does, where they clicked, what they edited, what license they added, where they went to in the process guide. Every single thing is tracking that as you move. And so by the time you report something, you could just say, hey, I had a problem on Bob Smith's record, and it's and then tell us what happened, and we can actually replay it and look at that entire set of data. AI chatbots we also rolled out to one of the agencies so that you could look at applicable rules and regulations, respond to the customer. FOIA redaction is coming up shortly, so you can just have a file that you've uploaded, and if someone sends you a document production request, you can simply tell AI within the application, please go redact these files, remove all the PII from it, and it will save you all that time-consuming effort of trying to, using a black highlighter and, and marking off all that kind of thing. It saves hours and hours of time. Language translation. AI, we're building that into our application. It does. It can show the app. It can show the website, as well as enable you to have conversations with licensees in their native language. And you don't have to tell it that they're speaking in Spanish and you're speaking in English. It auto detects, what the language is, and just immediately translates it into the correct language. So the licensee can communicate to you in Spanish. It realizes that, sends the message back to you in the agency in English. The agency employee responds in English, and it goes back in Spanish to the licensee, and it retains the actual original message that was sent to, in addition to the translated version. Mobile inspections are coming up, so completely it'll be integrated within the application itself. Right now, we integrate with a third-party application for mobile devices, and that will just become a standard feature of you being able to use GL Suite software, is being able to take it on the road with you. And then in the second quarter, we're fully implementing AI-driven business rules. So you don't even have to know that AI is helping you out. We're building in a capacity that kind of merges our rules engine and some of the AI capabilities into it. And so an example would be someone is uploading a picture, like I mentioned before. You could just, if someone's uploading a picture on the website, you could just build a business rule that triggers AI to go analyze the picture and say, hey, is it the right size? Is the person, is the background the right color? And AI, you can just build it. You can use AI just like you use other kinds of business rules, like a database rule or a rule that's been specifically programmed. Now you can make AI one of the features or powers that helps you out in your work. Those are just a few of the exciting things that will be coming up here in the first part of the year.
Absolutely. All right, we'll talk a little bit about GL Solutions. So many of you probably know us and have worked with us for many, many years, but for those that haven't, or maybe new or relatively new, GL Solutions was founded in 1997. GL Solutions was started by former regulators for regulators, so we have deep experience in these positions and at these agencies and departments. There's multiple people here that were former regulators that, Bill, I don't know if you want to tell the story of kind of how you got started and, what you did and what led to GL Solutions. I think everybody likes to hear that.
Yeah, I first, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this conversation, I really just went to help government agencies, and so I didn't really intend to start a software company. I wanted to go help government myself, and I took over this unit within the Department of Justice regulating gaming activities, and they had so many problems. They had a closet filled with checks and renewals that hadn't been processed in 6 months, and the legislative audit came in and wrote this nasty report about how we hide checks in our closet, and it was just it was kind of a disaster. And the main problem they had was information systems. And so when I was there, I rebuilt the whole information system. I happened to know how to program, taught someone else how to do it, my current business partner, our co-founder, Eric Staley. And then we've really been doing it ever since, and got an award from the Attorney General and said, hey, there's other agencies that do similar kinds of things, have similar kinds of problems. And so then I kind of thought about maybe a career in government service, but realized it took me 4 years to change the personnel process and information technology issues within a single agency. And I kind of concluded at the beginning that if I spent my whole career doing that, I might be able to touch 10 organizations. And I wanted to have a broader impact. And so I chose to go on the outside and be a vendor and service the agencies that way.
And so 27 years later, we're supporting agencies from Alaska to Connecticut, I think in 27 different states, and across multiple different industries, from accountancy to cosmetology to foster childcare licensing to firearm authorizations, gaming industry, alcohol, you name it. It's the same base platform, just with different configuration for the different industries. And so that really enables us to scale and service all the different licensing agencies and case management agencies across the country. We're a Microsoft partner, and as we mentioned earlier, we're GovRamp ready, certification pending. Just some key stats over here on the right, 99.9% uptime. We have 252 third-party integrations built. So that's your interfaces, many of those. And we've done just a ton of data conversion. So that's taking legacy databases, implementing it into GL Suite, which is our application. We've done that time and time again. Some more complex than others, but we've really kind of run the gamut on data conversions. And we process 45,000 tickets per year. So what do we mean by a ticket? So that means some sort of request that's come into our system. So that means, somebody requests, hey, I'd like to make a change or a modification to this report, hey, I found a bug or a misspelling or something in my system. We process 45,000 of those a year. So we just have a robust ability to process these tickets and get them turned around for all of our agencies across the US. Just to talk a little bit about GL Suite. So GL Suite is the application that GL Solutions provides and services. So we really start we think about it through trying to automate every step in your licensing process, from the initial online applications, renewals, and notifications to the back end. And so some of the product functionalities that either many of you are aware of or have, or maybe aren't aware of, that are out there, but self-service websites, digital communication, so the ability to communicate from the licensee population to the specific licensing staff that should be reviewing that communication. Workflow automation, so when something is implemented from the web, who does it go to, and who does it go through from once that person reviews it? Different agencies have pretty complex workflows where maybe it needs to go to some audit or review. Well, somebody's got to be notified of that they have that action item, or they have that application or case to process. And how is that set up in the system? Well, GL Suite, we'll set it up through work queues and make sure that person, when they log into the system, knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing and when, and by the due date. Alerts and notifications, case management, robust reporting, licensee verifications, online user manuals, board meeting management, continuing education, third-party integration, background checks, complaint intake, you name it. There's a lot there. And so if I could just, kind of some of the key areas that we feel really differentiate GL Solutions from the rest, and what makes us different, what makes us impactful. Well, as we touched on, we're built on decades of expertise. We have a deep regulatory knowledge and best practices. If we're implementing a system, we probably implemented a system just like yours in a different state, or very similar to yours in a different state. So we have the experience of doing that. It's been proven through our current client, and just the track, just the years that we've been in business and our track record of working with state agencies.
We support agencies from 2 to 500 or more employees, yep. All different sizes and complexity.
Absolutely. One solution, end-to-end design, so covers full regulatory lifecycle, integrated platform, reduces complexity, unified interfaces, improves accuracy and decision making, and it can scale with agencies. So it's, as your agency grows, we'll be right there with you, growing. Whether it's an umbrella agency or an agency that's taking on new licenses or applications, whatever you're scaling or however you're scaling, GL Solutions will be right there with you. It's highly configurable and future ready, so we adapt to new regulations without redevelopment. So you have some state statute or legislation that was passed. We're able to implement that pretty easily. We ensure compliance, efficiency, and traceability, and future-proof for evolving standards.
Just on Azure, we're tightly integrated with the Microsoft stack. And what that really means, Microsoft provides all these kinds of baseline services that are secure, they're developed, they're used by millions of users. And GL Suite, or the software that we make, is hosted within the Azure cloud. It'll integrate with many of the tools that your state already uses from Microsoft. Almost every state, without exception, is deep into the Microsoft stack. So we're tightly integrated with those. And I'm not going to go through all of these in particular, just to say that Many of the features that are built out, the robust features Microsoft offers, are tightly integrated within our application so that we don't have to rebuild them, retest them, and that kind of stuff.
And the 30,000-foot view, what sets us apart, we're a GovRAMP partner. We will be the first licensing SaaS platform that's GovRAMP certified. We have upfront pricing, so we're gonna be very transparent about our pricing, and it's based upon your staff users and not your licensee population, so it's a little bit more controlled there. 100% US-based workforce, so we're all of our workforce is here in the US. We don't outsource. Modernization service, so that agency transformation, we're going to guide you through modernizing your agency and towards continuous improvement. You have dedicated support, so you'll have an agency partner that's supported, that's really a member of your team. It's not a vendor relationship, we're a member of your team. So we will be with you through thick and thin. And we have versatile support options. So there's, our system enables you to go into lower environments and makes updates or customization. So we have many agencies that will do some self-configuration, and then sometimes they'll offshore work to us. We allow for that, so it's not just a complete SaaS offering. We actually enable you guys to go into the system and update as you see fit. If you have, we'll train you on that. We'll enable you to do that as well. So there's multiple different ways that you can receive support, whether it be through training on how to self-manage your system, or whether it be you just want GL Solutions to do the work. We're happy to do either and support on either side. So that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening in, and hope to hear from you soon. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right.